Once there was a kingdom that covered much of the world, stretching from the north to the south, from far east to the far west, where the sun never set, and the name of the kingdom was British Empire. But now it faces challenges, even providing basic meals for its people. What changed? Our grandparents were better off than our great grandparents, just as our parents were better off than our grandparents. Yet today, we are looking at first generation in living memory who are poorer than their parents, even as the economy continues to grow. No generation in modern history has been poorer than its parents, and it could be quite lot more poorer. So what are the reasons behind it? There are mainly three reasons. First, political parties give the highest priority to prevent too many people at the bottom of economic ladder falling from too far below the poverty line. Second, all priorities are given to the top 1% of the people and how they can continue to grow their wealth. And lastly, the lowest priority has been given to protecting the income of those in the middle. It was the year 1945 when the World War II ended and the period of reconstruction of Western economy started. London was damaged good in the year 1945 due to the war. The period from 1945 to 1980 was the golden age of capitalism. But something changed in 1979. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher was elected as the Prime Minister of the UK. And in 1981, Ronald Reagan became the President of the USA. These two leaders were talking about the new form of capitalism, market capitalism. This concept states that markets knows best and any intervention by the government, no matter how well intentioned, will make the economy worse. Ronald Reagan once said,
Government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
According to this doctrine, free market capitalism may occasionally undergo painful periods of creative destruction in the economy, but it guarantees the better use of resources, the highest level of economic growth, and the fair distribution of wealth. It was their story, and it's a persuasive story, clear and simple. Then the era started when it became the popular belief that government intervention cannot alleviate economic hardships, and they even named the variety of market capitalism as Thatcherism. So now, market capitalism has two main objectives: to free up the private sector and to limit the role of government in the economy. Since 1980, the UK's policy's direction has been to reduce government control wherever possible, having only light touch regulation to the financial services, privatizing the economy wherever possible, giving government contracts to private sector where full privatization is not possible, continuous reduction in the income taxes, and cutting back to the public spendings and continuously reducing the power of labor unions. And this market capitalism ultimately enabled the global financial crisis of 2008, the effects of which UK continues to feel today. 1970s were better than the last 10 years in terms of GDP growth. In 60s and 70s, average real GDP growth in UK was 2.84%, which fell to average 2.26% in subsequent decades till 2007. And since the global financial crisis of 2008, we are witnessing a further decline, where average real GDP growth till 2023 is just little over 1%. So what is the result of this secular fall? Why people are getting smaller slice of bigger pie? Although politicians often talk about increasing the overall size of the economy, and that will automatically give everyone bigger slice of the cake according to the politicians. That was indeed the case during the golden age of capitalism, but no more. In 1960s, CEOs used to get on an average 30 times more than their typical workers. Now that ratio is over 300 times. Britons were suffering from decades of economic hardships, which led to the Brexit. In June 2016, British voted to leave the European Union. It was unexpected. An exit poll showed that 70% of the voters that thought remain in the EU would win, including 54% of those who voted to leave. This was the first concrete sign that a backlash was underway in 2016. The real problem with the referendum was that it unified voters' discontent, but didn't specify what they truly wanted. It simply asked if the UK should stay in or leave the European Union, without explaining what leaving would really mean, while the remain option was straightforward since it was known path for the past 40 years. The meaning of leave was absolutely unclear. The Leave campaigner were not able to decide what sort of economic, political and security relationship the UK should have outside the EU. The ruling Tory party was deeply divided over Brexit. It took them 18 months after the vote to discuss UK's trade relationship with the EU in the cabinet, even though they had over half of their foreign trade with the European Union countries. While they agreed on leaving, they could not decide on the terms of exit. The Brexit vote revealed deep divisions within the UK. People who had faced prolonged economic hardship wanted to leave, but those looking to the future wanted to remain. The exit poll showed that Leave's voters were older, less educated, more likely to be living outside the major cities of the UK. Interestingly, all the pro-Brexit leaders disappeared from the mainstream, leaving the implementation to the Theresa May, who had actually voted against Brexit.
The government will put the final deal that is agreed between the UK and the EU to a vote in both.
Since the vote, Britain has changed 5 of their prime ministers, which further led to the policy confusion for the economy stakeholders. Now the UK is struggling with the rising energy cost and high inflation, which stands at 6.8% in July 2023, after a peak of 11.1% in October 2022. This worsening situation is affecting the middle class. The people are facing what has been dubbed as a eat or heat dilemma. Almost 1 in 5, that is 21%, or around 15 million people, now live below the poverty line, with the highest poverty rates in London at 29%. Simultaneously, UK is also home to the wealthy upper class. The number of millionaires has risen from 1,502 in 2012 to 2,849 in 2021. And there are 171 billionaires as well. In spite of all these, millions of people can no longer pay their bills despite working hard. The welfare system is collapsing and family benefits have been cut by 50% in the last decade. Over 9 million people and 4 million children are afflicted by food insecurities. The number of food banks were around 10 years back in UK, and now that number has risen to 2,800. Everyone in Britain is talking about inflation. Within a year, food prices has risen by 14.8%. Things are more expensive than ever before, and people are having lesser and lesser choices on their plates. Couple can't even afford childcare. Britons who are civil servants are also unable to afford childcare services, and that's the reason most of the civil servant parents are switching to the part-time jobs so that they can look after their children themselves. Why? Why Britons can't even take care of their children? Because that would have cost them £120 per day, and the net pay of average civil servant parent for a day is about £80 only. Economically, it doesn't make any sense them to work. And if we are talking about professional women who cannot afford to live in a house, pay their rent on time, have to hit the heating on occasion only when it's cold, and even can't afford basic childcare services, then there is something not right. UK is famous for its glorified national healthcare system. Let's take a dive of deep reality check into it. People have multiple health problems as the median age of kingdom is increasing, which is around 41 years in 2023. Number of very old people, means those over 90 years old, have risen from just under 4 lakh in 2001 to over 6 lakh past 2020. More and more old age 65 plus years old Britons are working to sustain their livelihood. There seems to be no retirement even after retirement age. These people are living with multiple long-term medical conditions like diabetes, heart disease, stroke cases and depressions. According to NHS rule, patients gets 10 minutes slot with its doctor. That's the shortest time span that any industrialized nation in the world. And this 10-minute slot includes reviewing medical history, discussing symptoms, taking notes, making a diagnosis, and prescribing treatments. People can't even find time to discuss all of their health problems with their doctors. There is a Dr. Spencer in Fleetwood, England, who once asked his young patient to stop drinking alcohol. Otherwise, doctor said it will kill you. And he replied, "Doctor, I know you are trying to help me, but it is not the thought of dying that stresses me, but the thought of living." It's a tragic but not uncommon story in poor areas of the country. Doctors are not even recommending conventional treatment to their patients anymore due to their unaffordability of Medicare, but are directing them to the unconventional treatments like exercise, yoga, meditation, and other various physical games so that they could naturally improve their health. 30 years ago, it was kinda unthinkable that someone working full-time in UK would not be able to afford their own home. Now, we are talking about people working full-time and can't even afford the rent of their homes. That's the extent of crisis UK is in.
Worldwide interests. Every interests. Follow here. Subscribe for interesting and full of knowledge videos.